The doors of a luxurious restaurant in the heart of Madrid swing open. Crystal chandeliers hang from the ceiling like frozen waterfalls. Golden railings glimmer under the warm lights. Soft piano music flows in the background, mixing with the quiet. Chatter of wealthy guests dressed in tuxedos and designer gowns. It's the kind of place where reservations are, booked months in advance, where each dish costs more than an ordinary person's monthly salary. This was not just a restaurant, it was a temple of luxury, a playground for the elite. And into this palace of wealth and glitter walked a man, dressed in simple jeans, a plain jacket. No flashy jewelry, no security detail, no fanfare. Heads turned. Some guests frowned, whispering behind expensive wine glasses. Who let him in? Does he even belong here? The man walked calmly, choosing a quiet table by the corner. His posture was relaxed, his expression humble, almost invisible among the extravagance. But before he could even settle in, a waiter appeared. His smile was sharp, dripping with arrogance. He leaned down and whispered, just loud enough for others to hear, "Are you sure you can even afford to eat here?" The words struck like a knife through the quiet air. Nearby guests chuckled. Some smirked. The man looked up, his eyes steady, calm, but his lips carried only a faint smile. "Yes," he replied softly. "A table will be fine." The waiter straightened, scanning him up and down, unimpressed. "This isn't a place for ordinary people. We serve a very exclusive clientele. Maybe you'd be more comfortable somewhere else." But the man didn't flinch. He didn't argue. He simply nodded, calm as ever. "I'll dine here tonight." The waiter rolled his eyes and muttered under his breath, "We'll see about that." And right there, the stage was set. A waiter too blind to see who he was speaking to. A man too humble to reveal the truth. And a restaurant full of eyes, about to witness a lesson they would never forget. Before we continue, let me ask you something. If you stumbled upon this moment, sitting at a nearby table, what would you do? Would you laugh along with the waiter? Or would you defend the man who seemed out of place? Make sure you hit that like button if you believe dignity matters more than appearance. And subscribe, because this story is about to take a turn you won't expect. Because the man sitting silently in that corner was none other than Cristiano Ronaldo. The restaurant was not just famous in Madrid. It was legendary across Europe. A place where billionaires closed deals, movie stars hid in private booths, and politicians whispered promises over vintage wine. The name itself was enough to silence. A room, La Gloria. Every surface shimmered, marble floors polished until you could see your reflection. Velvet curtains heavy enough to block the world outside. Chandeliers that dripped crystals like falling stars. The air itself carried a fragrance, an expensive mix of roses, rare spices, and fresh truffles being shaved over golden plates. Here, meals weren't just food, they were performances. A single plate could take hours to prepare. A single bite could cost hundreds of euros. Guests didn't just come to eat, they came to be seen, to prove they belonged among the elite. And yet, in the middle of all this glamour, sat a man who didn't seem to care. Cristiano Ronaldo. He wore clothes that would not turn heads in the street. His shoes were clean but ordinary. His jacket looked plain compared to the tailored Armani suits and diamond-studded gowns around him. To the untrained eye, he looked like an outsider who had wandered into the wrong place. But if you looked closer, if you really watched, you would see something different. A calmness in his posture, a quiet dignity in his eyes, the kind of confidence that doesn't come from clothes or status, but from knowing exactly who you are. Why did Ronaldo dress this way? Why did he walk into La Gloria like any other man, without the shield of fame and fortune? The answer takes us back to where it all began. A small island off the coast of Portugal. Cristiano was born there, in a modest home where money was scarce, but dreams were abundant. His father worked at a local club. His mother struggled to put food on the table. Ronaldo often spoke about nights when there wasn't enough to eat, about wearing shoes until they tore, about kicking footballs made of rags because real ones were too expensive. It was in those streets that he learned his first lesson, that greatness doesn't come from appearances, that it comes from discipline, hunger, and heart. And even when fame arrived, when stadiums shouted his name, when trophies filled his shelves, when luxury became something he could buy in an instant, he never forgot Madeira. He never forgot those humble beginnings. That's why, even in a palace like La Gloria, Ronaldo didn't need to dress like royalty. He didn't need diamonds to shine, because true greatness doesn't scream, it whispers, around him. The other guests laughed loudly, lifting champagne glasses as if the bubbles themselves proved their worth. One man in a gold watch tapped his fingers impatiently, as if the world owed him attention. Women in shimmering gowns adjusted their jewelry under the glow of the chandeliers, each competing to outshine the other. They chased luxury. They worshipped status. But Ronaldo? He valued simplicity. He sat quietly, scanning the menu with genuine interest, not caring who was watching. To him, food was food. A meal was about nourishment and company, not about the price tag on the plate. And yet, the waiter saw none of this. To him, Ronaldo was just another customer who didn't belong. And that mistake, a mistake of judging a man by what he wore instead of who he was about to change everything. And yet, the waiter saw none of this. To him, Ronaldo was just another customer who didn't belong. And that mistake, a mistake of judging a man by what he wore instead of who he was about to change everything. This, the waiter said, dropping the menu onto the table with a dull thud, should be perfect for you. No napkin placed neatly. No gentle words of welcome. Just disdain. A few nearby guests chuckled. One man in a tailored suit whispered to his companion, "Looks like they've got a stray in tonight." Another woman raised an eyebrow. "I don't know why the manager lets people like that in here." But not every guest agreed. At a corner table, an elderly couple watched quietly. Their eyes softened. The man leaned closer to his wife. "Don't. You see?" he murmured. "That's Cristiano Ronaldo." His wife squinted, then nodded. "You're right, but he's keeping quiet. He doesn't want attention." They said nothing more. They simply watched. At another table, a boy no older than 10 tugged at his father's sleeve. "Dad," he whispered excitedly, "that's Ronaldo. My favorite player. Why is everyone laughing at him?" The father hushed him quickly. "Quiet, son. Not here. Not now." Meanwhile, the waiter lingered, smirking. "Careful with what you order," he said mockingly. "Some dishes here cost more than your month's rent." Ronaldo's calm eyes lifted from the menu. "I'll have the filet Rossini, please." The waiter blinked, then laughed. "Sir, that's 400 euros. Are you sure you want it? Perhaps a salad would be easier on your pocket." The room stirred. More whispers. More laughter. But Ronaldo only smiled. "That will be fine." The waiter scribbled the order down with exaggerated sighs, shaking his head as if dealing with a foolish child. Instead of heading to the kitchen, he stopped to serve another table first 2 businessmen who had arrived after Ronaldo. "Gentlemen," he said warmly, "I'll have your meals out quickly. Unlike some guests tonight, you actually belong here." Both men chuckled, unaware of the storm building. Minutes dragged on. Ronaldo waited patiently, hands folded, his posture never breaking. But the waiter made sure to serve every other table, first bringing bread, pouring wine, delivering appetizers, while Ronaldo's table remained bare. At one point, the waiter returned and asked, his voice loud enough to carry, "Are you?" Sure you can pay when the bill arrives? We don't run tabs for strangers. The nearby tables erupted in quiet laughter. But not everyone found it amusing. The boy clenched his fists under the table. The elderly woman whispered to her husband, "He doesn't deserve this." Not him, not anyone. But still, Ronaldo remained calm. Not a trace of anger. Not a single harsh word. Only patience. As time stretched, the waiter's insults grew bolder. "You know, sir," he said mockingly, "this corner suits you. It keeps you out of sight. After all, you wouldn't want to disturb our real guests." The arrogance was complete. The humiliation deliberate. The waiter wanted him to leave, but Ronaldo stayed, silent, calm, his presence unshaken, and that silence, that refusal to break, was what unsettled the room most of all. The plates clattered, the piano played on, the chandeliers glimmered, yet at Ronaldo's table there was only silence. No bread, no wine, no appetizer. Just a man waiting, as the rest of the restaurant enjoyed a show at his expense. The waiter swept past him again and again, always with a tray, always with a smirk. Each time his eyes flicked toward Ronaldo, as if daring him to lose patience. But he didn't. Not once. At one table, a young man whispered to his date, "Why doesn't he just leave?" "It's embarrassing." The woman shrugged. "Maybe he can't afford to. Maybe he's hoping someone else will pay for him." A businessman nearby muttered, "This is La Gloria. People like him don't belong here. I don't know why they even let him through the door." But across the room, not everyone shared the same thought. The elderly man who had recognized Ronaldo leaned closer to his wife. "Do you see? He's not angry, not even a little. Anyone else would have walked out already, but not him." His wife nodded softly. "That's dignity. That's strength." At the boys' table, the young fan grew restless. "Dad, why aren't you saying anything? That's Ronaldo. He doesn't deserve this." The father sighed, uneasy. "Sometimes it's better not to get involved, son." The boy clenched his fists. "But it's wrong." Meanwhile, the waiter finally returned, placing a single glass of water on Ronaldo's table. "There you go," he said with mock kindness. "Something simple, something safe. We wouldn't want to overwhelm you with anything too luxurious." A ripple of laughter spread through the room. Ronaldo only smiled. He lifted the glass, sipped calmly, and set it back down. Minutes turned into an hour. Other tables were filled with the smell of roasted duck, saffron risotto, truffled pasta. Guests laughed loudly, glasses clinking in celebration. But at Ronaldo's table nothing, until at last the waiter returned with a tray, carrying the 400 euros dish Ronaldo had ordered. He placed it down with a flourish, almost slamming the plate onto the table. "Here it is, the most expensive meal we have. Enjoy, if you can." The whispers spread like fire. "Do you think he can pay for that? Maybe he's bluffing. Maybe he'll run out. They'll have to call the police if he can't afford it." The tension tightened, thicker than the velvet curtains hanging above. Even the pianist seemed to slow, his fingers pressing the keys with hesitation, as if the entire restaurant was holding its breath. Ronaldo picked up his fork and knife, calm, precise, not a tremor in his hand. He ate slowly, each bite measured, unbothered by the eyes piercing into his back. The waiter hovered nearby, arms crossed, smirking. "Careful," he said mockingly. "That dish alone costs more than you probably make in a year. But don't worry, we'll make sure you wash dishes in the back when you can't pay." The room erupted in chuckles. But beneath the laughter, there was a current of unease. Some guests began to shift in their seats. Some frowned, realizing this was no longer funny. It was cruel. The boy whispered fiercely to his father, "Why doesn't he just tell them who he is? Why doesn't he prove them wrong? The father shook his head. Because sometimes the truth doesn't need to be shouted. And so Ronaldo remained silent, calm, his dignity intact. The bill was coming. The waiter knew it. The guests knew it. The question burned in the air like fire. Can he pay? Or will this end in shame? The suspense was unbearable. The laughter had turned nervous. Even those who mocked him now leaned forward, unable to tear there. Eyes away. The piano stopped. The chatter hushed. All that remained was the sound of Ronaldo's knife against the plate. Every humiliation had been delivered. Every insult had been spoken. Now came the final act. Would Cristiano Ronaldo be thrown out of the finest restaurant in Madrid? Or would something else, something no one expected, change the night forever? The moment the bill was about to be dropped on the table, the air shifted. A sharp voice cut through the chatter. "Excuse me? What exactly is happening here?" It was the manager, impeccably dressed in a tailored black suit. His presence immediately commanded respect. He scanned the dining room with the precision of a hawk, his eyes narrowing as he spotted the waiter standing smugly beside Ronaldo's table. The waiter straightened quickly, forcing a fake smile. "Ah, sir, don't worry. I'm just handling a special customer." The manager's gaze slid past him. Then it landed on Ronaldo. And in that instant, his entire demeanor changed. His face drained of color. His posture stiffened. His eyes widened in disbelief. "Mr. Ronaldo?" His voice trembled, halfway between shock and reverence. "Cristiano Ronaldo?" The restaurant froze. Glasses stopped mid-air. Forks hovered above plates. A silence so heavy it could be cut with a knife filled the room. Gasps echoed across the dining hall. The young boy at the corner table gripped his father's arm. "See? I told you it was him." The father's jaw dropped, speechless. The elderly couple exchanged knowing looks. Meanwhile, the businessman who had mocked Ronaldo earlier shrank into his chair, his face burning red. But no one was more shaken than the waiter. His smirk collapsed. His confidence evaporated. He stumbled over his words. "Mr. Ronaldo, I didn't." "I had no idea." The manager turned on him, his voice sharp as glass. "You insulted him? You humiliated our guest?" He shook his head in disbelief. "Do you have any idea what you've done?" The waiter's lips trembled, but no words came out. Then the manager looked back at Ronaldo, his tone shifting instantly to one of respect. "Mr. Ronaldo, I deeply apologize. We should have welcomed you properly the moment you walked in. Please forgive us." Ronaldo set his fork down calmly, his eyes meeting the manager's. His voice was steady, quiet, but carried through the entire restaurant. "It's all right. I didn't come here for special treatment." And then, the twist no one expected. The manager bowed slightly, his next words silencing the room. "Ladies and gentlemen, what none of you realize is that Cristiano Ronaldo isn't just our guest tonight." He paused, letting the weight of his words sink in. "He is one of the owners of this restaurant." The dining hall exploded in gasps. Murmurs spread like wildfire. "He OWNS it? No way. My God." All this time, the waiter staggered back, his face as pale as the tablecloths. His arrogance had vanished, replaced with horror. Laughter from earlier turned into whispers of shame. Guests who had mocked Ronaldo now lowered their eyes, too embarrassed to look at him. The young boy at his table beamed, whispering to his father, "See, Dad? That's why he stayed calm. He didn't need to prove anything." The father nodded slowly, humbled. All eyes returned to Ronaldo. He didn't gloat. He didn't smirk. He simply leaned back in his chair, his calmness more powerful than any outburst could have been. And in that silence, every person in the restaurant realized the same thing. The man they had underestimated was the one who held the keys to everything around them. The manager's announcement still hung in the air. He is one of the owners of this restaurant. The silence that followed was deafening. Every guest sat frozen, eyes wide, hearts racing. And at the center of it all, Cristiano Ronaldo remained calm, his expression soft, almost forgiving. He rose slowly from his chair. His tall frame seemed to command the entire room without effort. He looked around, at the chandeliers, the velvet curtains, the polished tables, but most of all, at the faces staring back at him. When he finally spoke, his voice was gentle, but every word carried weight. This restaurant was built on an idea, a simple idea, that anyone who walks through those doors deserves to feel welcome. Tonight, that idea was forgotten. A ripple of discomfort spread across the room. The waiter's knees nearly buckled as he stared at the floor, unable to meet. Ronaldo's gaze. Ronaldo continued, calm but firm. You see, dignity isn't something you give to people only if they look wealthy. Respect isn't reserved for the ones who arrive in expensive suits or flashy cars. True respect is given to every single person, no matter who they are or how they appear. He paused, letting the words settle. The young boy at the corner whispered, yes, his eyes shining with admiration. Ronaldo's eyes swept across the guests, then landed on the staff gathered at the edges of the room. I'd like to meet with the team tonight, after the doors close. The manager nodded immediately. Of course, Mr. Ronaldo. Later that night, the restaurant stood empty. The chatter of guests had faded, leaving only the quiet hum of the city outside. Inside, the staff assembled nervously in the dining hall. Some shifted uncomfortably, others avoided eye contact. At the front stood Ronaldo, hands in his pockets, his presence calm but commanding. We all make mistakes, he began softly. But what matters most is what we choose to do after them. His gaze moved to the waiter, who stood trembling at the back of the group, eyes glistening with shame. Earlier tonight, we saw what happens when someone is judged too quickly, when appearance is mistaken for worth. That isn't who we are, and it isn't who we should ever be. The waiter finally stepped forward, voice breaking. Mr. Ronaldo, I was wrong. I was arrogant. I thought I was protecting the restaurant's image, but really, I was destroying it. I promise, I will change. Ronaldo studied him for a long moment. Then he nodded slowly. That promise isn't to me. It's to yourself. Real change comes from within. If you truly want to be better, start by treating everyone as if they matter, because they do. The waiter lowered his head, tears falling freely. For the first time all night, his arrogance was gone. In its place was humility. Ronaldo turned back to the rest of the staff. His voice grew warmer. Remember this? The man in worn-out clothes may carry more wisdom than the one in gold. The woman who walks in quietly may have the greatest story you'll ever hear. Never forget, kindness costs nothing, but it can change everything. The staff nodded, some visibly moved, others quietly reflecting. The lesson had been delivered, not with anger, but with grace. Later, as the night deepened, Ronaldo stepped out of La Gloria. The streets of Madrid sparkled under the glow of street lamps. Expensive cars crawled along the avenue, and laughter echoed from late-night cafes. But Ronaldo walked calmly, hands in his pockets, blending into the night as if he were just another passerby. He didn't need applause. He didn't need recognition. He had left something far more powerful behind, a message. And if there was one thought every guest, every staff member, every person who heard this story would carry with them, it was this: in a world where you can be anything, choose to be kind. True greatness isn't measured in wealth, trophies, or fame. It's measured in dignity, respect, and the small choices we make every day.